Welcome guys, it's time to go through and rate each and every one of the drivers and how they got on over the whole weekend of the dramatic Austrian Grand Prix. It only got dramatic actually right at the end of that race, didn't it? It was absolutely brilliant in the end. We've not had drama like that for, well, quite some time, have we? I think Abu Dhabi 21 was probably on a lesser level than that, but Silverstone 21, that sort of vibes you're getting from this incident, isn't it, this weekend? And we got a surprise race winner in the end. Let's get straight through it. Number one, George Russell. He just did a brilliant job in terms of getting that car in the right position just to take advantage of anything that goes wrong in front of him. His sprint was decent overall. Finished fourth. It's probably where he should have finished in the race potentially, had the two McLarens got it right and Max Verstappen and Norris didn't crash. I think he would have finished there probably in the race. The McLarens were faster than him. Max Verstappen was faster than him. And the Mercedes is probably the third fastest car now, isn't it? It's yo-yoing around all over the place, but he put himself in the right position and he took absolutely full advantage of that. And that's all you can do as a racing driver, because it could have been any one of the three really, isn't it? Had Carlos Sainz got the jump and done enough ahead of him, it could have been him. Oscar Piastri, but for that qualifying incident, it could have been him. But George, he did the job, and that's win number 2. He can be massively happy with that. Mercedes had an upturn in form. They've got closer to the front, so it's good to see them. They've leapfrogged Ferrari, which is strange considering Ferrari looked like the ones with the big step, didn't they? And they've dropped off over the last couple of races. They need to sort of pick up next time for Silverstone, don't we? But Mercedes, which notoriously would struggle here, pulled it off. I think there was a really, really good result from George Russell. I mean, I'm going to give him a 10 out of 10 because I think he just did the absolute perfect job and all he could do really. Second place, Oscar Piastri, and he'll be kicking himself because qualifying was just for that small error in track limits, and I think that's controversial in itself. He went off into the gravel, would have lost more time than he gained. So when they've gone to the extent that they have, thankfully this time around in Australia, to stop all the track limit effort, it's a shame that he got penalised for that, because he would have definitely been in there for the win, obviously, instead of George Russell. But he was quick this weekend and he did a good job overall. He was second in the sprint as well, and so you just got to give him credit. I think he did a really good job. Disappointing, and that's the only small part of it, but he did recovered well from 7th place to finish 5th, second in the end. I think that was made up 5 places. A really, really good job from Oscar. I'm giving him a 9 out of 10 because I think he did overall a pretty solid job. He beat Norris in the sprint as well. You've got to give him credit for that. 3rd place, Carlos Sainz, and he had a much better weekend, didn't he? Got it all under control, pulled off the performances when he could have. He beat Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes in the sprint. He did a good job in qualifying and a deserved podium in the end. Again, much like George Russell, just maximised what he had underneath him in that car. He was never going to fight for the win. The Ferrari just seems to have lost a little bit of direction, but all he can do is beat his teammate, and he did that. It's overall a really, really good job from Carlos Sainz. He seems to have picked up from his dip. The last couple of races have been good for him, and a much needed podium again for him. Good to see him up there. I'm going to give him an 8 out of 10. 4th place, Lewis Hamilton in the end. He had a scruffy race. His sprint was not great. He got beaten by George comfortably there, and in qualifying he was beaten again by George Russell. A couple of places ahead of him was George, wasn't he, in the end? And he just never seemed to got on top of it, did he? He just always scruffy little mistakes. Even in the race, he got a 5-second penalty for crossing the line. He was a bit ragged, wasn't he? Just not his best race. He wasn't happy with himself at all. 4th place finish, purely just thanks to the DNFs ahead of him, because otherwise it wasn't going fantastically well at all, was he? He was beaten by Sainz as well. A little bit harshly because he did the job at the first corner, and I think he should have really been allowed to keep that. He didn't really have anywhere to go. If he'd kept on the track, he would have, it would have been an incident, and Sainz potentially would have got the penalty there for hitting into him, wasn't he? Because he didn't leave him enough space on the outside. So when it's first corner, first lap, I thought they were going to give some leniency. He did have to give that up. Potentially they were saying there was a penalty incoming had he not done that. So he did the right thing, but picked up a penalty in the end, regardless for his troubles, Lewis Hamilton. But yeah, I think overall he's got to be disappointed with this weekend. I'm going to give him a 6 out of 10. 5th place, Max Verstappen, the controversial figure in the end, isn't it? With the collision with Lando Norris. Overall, it was some dodgy defensive work early on in terms of his battle with Lando Norris. The incident itself wasn't the worst of the defensive work, was it, to be honest with you? It just seems like he misjudged how much of a gap he gave to Norris. And normally you would see that if they bump tyres together, that it's just they've touched and they live to fight another day. And it's strange that they both got punches from what looked like not the biggest whack into each other, was it, in terms of incidents? But yeah, his fault. It looked like it was all his, under control, wasn't it? That's the strange part. Up until lap 52, 50 odd laps of just absolutely brilliant controlled racing from Max Verstappen, and then he made a slow stop, a mistake on the outlap, and then he just couldn't shake Lando Norris off like he did earlier in the race, could he? It didn't help. Obviously he had the older tyres compared to Lando Norris's new tyres, so overall he'll be disappointed. It was his fault. He got a 10-second penalty for that. He did the job though in qualifying. He was stuck it on pole. In the sprint he was brilliant again, to be honest with you, and it looked like it was his race for the taking. And it's strange how it kind of got away from him, this race win, wasn't it? Because it just come down to a small slow stop and then it just all flipped on his head, and it never really looked like that race was going to end that way at all up until that point in the race, to be honest with you. So he'll be disappointed. I think overall with the sprint win and the qualifying poles, it's hard to judge Verstappen, because I think but for the incident, which was still in my eyes was good racing, Max went over the line a little bit. I think Lando went over the line a little bit in some parts with his aggressive moves. He ran wide and did that, but that's racing, I think. The only thing, I think the movement under braking from Verstappen was that was the bad part on it. But we've seen Max push the boundaries, and that's what makes him world champion, like I've said many times. I'm going to give him a 7 out of 10. It's a hard one to judge Max's race, to be honest with you, this weekend, especially given the incident at the end. That's really what it comes down to. 6th place, Nico Hülkenberg. A fantastic race result from him. It was brilliant. 9th place in qualifying to pick up and run away with 6 places. Hold off the fastest car on the field, Red Bull, of Sergio Perez, or not in his hand, Perez. It's been awful, hasn't it? He has, but Hülkenberg, all you can do is just defend for your life, and he absolutely did that on harder tyres, which were 12 laps older than Perez's, to just keep that position. An absolutely tremendous job from him. His sprint race wasn't too fantastic though, was it? Beaten by Kevin Magnussen. He was beaten by Magnussen in sprint qualifying as well, but when it counted, he came good. I'm giving him a 10 out of 10 because I was so impressed with that defensive work, holding back Sergio Perez. In 7th place, Sergio Perez. He couldn't get past the mighty Haas, could he, in the end? It's been a horrible weekend. He's been so slow. His qualifying, he was way off. In the sprint, he was way off Max Verstappen. Just never looked like he was ever going to be in the fight, even to be in like 5th place. I know, that's still 2 or 3 places down from Max Verstappen, but the gap seems to have got larger, and especially here over a smaller circuit or shorter circuit where it's only a 1 minute 5 second lap. We've seen generally like it mean that everyone closes up on the field, but he's seemed to have got further away. So overall a horrible weekend from him. Another really disappointing one. A 1 out of 10 for me for Sergio Perez. 8th place is Kevin Magnussen, and again he did a really good lap. Started in 12th, good start, made up a couple of places. He did the undercut on Nico Hülkenberg on the first stop, didn't he? Got ahead of him. A great battle between the two Haas guys, and then in the end lost out to Nico, but to finish home in 8th place. A really good points haul for the Haas team this weekend, considering where they were. Two of them just been fighting really well. It's probably one of Kevin's better weekends for a long time, hasn't he? He was a lot closer to Nico Hülkenberg, especially in sprint, and it actually looked for the first time he might carry that over. His qualifying for the race wasn't great. He got outshone by Hülkenberg, but to come home where he did, I think he'd be massively happy with that. I'm going to go for a 9 out of 10 because I think that was a really good result from him in that car. A 9th place for Daniel Ricciardo, and another one with a cracking weekend. He put himself in the right position, didn't he, for that 11th place. He qualified for the race, and then to come home with some points, he was in P10, and then obviously the DNF for Lando Norris meant he picked up a P9. Yeah, this is the kind of results he needs to be doing. He was much faster than Yuki Tsunoda in the race, and this is why they've got the experienced head to just bring home the points when they can. A really good job from him. I was, absolutely crushing on him at one point. He could still lose his seat. He needs more than just these couple of performances, but the last races have been good for him. He needs to continue that up to next time out in Silverstone, but I'm giving him a 9 out of 10 because I think that was a really solid job from him. 10th place, Pierre Gasly picked up the points for Alpine. They looked strong, didn't they? They had a really good sprint race, struggled in the qualifying for the main race, and then they looked to be on it again, didn't they? The pair of them, both a great battle with Ocon, and he came on top of that, and then it was fighting with the guys, not really able to do too much of an impression on Ricciardo. Tried his best, couldn't make the move on him, but I think that was a good result. So a point in the end, which I didn't think they would be getting after where he qualified, so you can be really happy with that. I'm going to go for an 8 out of 10 for Pierre Gasly. 11th place, Charles Leclerc. He had a weekend to forget, really, wasn't it? It wasn't a really good sprint in any event. It was just horrible sprint, finished way down, poor qualifying for the sprint, and then again for the race, wasn't he? It was a horrible qualifying way back, and then in the race, unlucky with the first corner incident. He just got squashed on either side by Sergio Perez and Oscar Piastri, and then he was way down. I think it was a good recovery to get back into P11. I think point was potentially on, but I think that was asking just a little bit too much. But he struggled. He was just making really scruffy mistakes, wasn't he? Again, it looks like they're struggling with the balance on that car. It looks like it's on a knife edge again, doesn't it, where he's making the mistake losing that rear end, where it's just taken him by surprise. And it was an issue with last year's car, so whatever direction they've changed for upgrades for this car, it's taken him towards last year, where it's not really helped them progress and being able to push on it. They need something to help them for Silverstone, where they've traditionally done alright, haven't they, over the last couple of years. But it needs something. Charles Leclerc, a bit more luck after Monaco, the great high. He's just not really kicked on from there. He's had a couple of horrible races, and this has been another one, a 5 out of 10 for me. 12th place for Ocon in the end. I think he had a good race, didn't he? It looked like he was going to pick up some good points, the pair of the Alpines. He had a good battle with Pierre Gasly, and then a part flew off his car not long after that. I don't think there was any incident or touch with Pierre Gasly that I'm aware of, but from there on, he looked like he should have been a comfortable top 10, but dropped down later on, and they'll be disappointed with that. He's been beaten by his teammate. Did well though in the early parts of the race, and it looked like he was the one to bring the lead Alpine home, but it wasn't to be in the end. I'm gone for a 6 out of 10 because I think it was disappointing from where he was at one point in the race. 13th place finish for Lance Stroll. He had a decent sprint, didn't he? Out-qualified Fernando Alonso. Didn't qualify well at all. It was horrible, 17th place, but in the race he's moved forward. It's all you can ask for. I know it's obviously helped with the DNF of Lando Norris, but he's done what he could, I suppose. He was never really in that car to pick up any points this weekend, but he's beaten his teammate quite comfortably, so I guess that's where his battle lies. Signed a new contract for next year, and a decent result, I suppose, in the Aston Martin. That car's gone backwards, hasn't it? And they really need to sort themselves out. A 7 out of 10, I think, purely because he's made up a few good places and that car hasn't been great. So I think, based on what he's got underneath him, I think it was a decent result to come home in 13th place. 14th place finish for Yuki Tsunoda, and it's been a struggle of a weekend for him, hasn't he? He finished 13th in the sprint, finished 14th in the race. he's just never really got on top of it. He got a horrible fine for a horrible remark he made over radio. Apologised for that. But yeah, his race was as horrible as his wording, wasn't it? It just a one to forget for him. He really needs to kick on and, you know, prove why he's, well, get back that early season form and show to the world why Red Bull or Racing Bulls have retained him for next year. He's a really good driver. One I absolutely really love watching him, to be honest with you, and especially as normally his radio comments, it was not the right word in this weekend though from him, was it? And he really needs to sort of just knuckle down and get himself back together. A 4 out of 10 for me. 15th place, Alex Albon, and the Williams struggled here, didn't they? Sprint was not good at all. Qualifying was better for Albon. 16th, he had a poor sprint qualifying, didn't he? But pulled it back in the race. He got a 5-second penalty, just like Lewis, for pit entry violation, and then yeah, he managed to beat an Alonso and 2 Saubers. So the car wasn't great, and it's probably the best he could have hoped for here. Hard to judge, but I'm going to give him a 5 out of 10. 16th place finish for Valtteri Bottas. It's, yeah, the only good thing about his race is that he's beaten Fernando Alonso somehow, hasn't he? But the car has been horrible all weekend. They just didn't suit this circuit at all. They were way down off the pace. Comfortably beats his teammate though, who's had more of a stinker than he has. But Valtteri, I'm going to give him a 6 out of 10. I think that's probably generous as well. More of a 5, to be honest. Zhou Guanyu finished in 17th. Yeah, he started from the pit lane and then did a full change of setup. Finished 25 seconds behind Valtteri Bottas in the end. The car was just really horrible for here, and he's not really shone. He's been way down and way at the back, even in the sprint. I'm going to give him a 4 out of 10. It's been, yeah, awful for him. Fernando Alonso's next up is a name that you wouldn't think. 18th place finish in the race. He had a horrible sprint race and it just didn't get any better in the race at all. The surprising thing here is that he managed to pull off a fastest lap of the race on lap 70. So I all along I've been giving him benefit of that he had some sort of car problem, but to go and pull that off shows that there was something in the car that, you know, there was pace in that car. It's always incredible when you see that from drivers, don't you, where they just somehow seem to pull off a lap despite being poor for most of the race, and they just get fastest lap somehow. And that's what's happened here with Fernando Alonso, isn't it? An incredibly poor race to finish way down, easily beaten by his teammate. He had that incident where he just ran into the back crashed into Zhou Guanyu. Clumsy move, really not like what you expect of Fernando Alonso, and he's lost a bit of his mojo, hasn't he? But expect better from him next time out. I've gone for a 2 out of 10 because I just think it was really disappointing and poor. 19th place for Logan Sargent. He pit on lap 1, he had some sort of issue, I think, and then he just finished 14 seconds behind Zhou Guanyu. At one point it was absolutely miles and slow off the pace. Was there some issue? We'll find out, but I'm giving him a 1 out of 10 because I just thought he was really that bad. The DNF, Lando Norris, the only one in the end. His weekend was disappointing, I'd have to say, because sprint was his for the taking, wasn't it? He made the move on Max Verstappen, a brilliant move as well, and I think he was kicking himself going into the race because it was such a bad mistake to let him have the inside corner on the next, you know, turn after he made the move, and I think he was really kicking himself with that. Had he made that stick, he would have gone on to win that sprint race. Put himself in a really good job, but he got out of sync. Piastri beats him. In the race, he made some good moves, but it was a really good fight with Max Verstappen in the end. He didn't have enough pace early on, did he, though, to trouble Max Verstappen, and then it was just surprising how it all came at once after them second stops, but he was brilliant. Should he have been a bit more patient on the moves? It's hard to say when you look back. It looked like inevitable that he would have made that pass on Max Verstappen. He was always there or thereabouts. He wasn't really hassling Max, and it's the first time we've seen a driver do that for an absolutely age, isn't it? And it's a shame that it ended in collision, because we would have had another sort of 10 laps of absolute ding-dong battling. I think potentially, had he got past, I'm not sure he would have ran away with it. Max was struggling and Norris had the faster car, and with the DRS it would have been hard to shake off, so we could have seen potentially, you know, Max giving it a go for another couple laps should or could if Lando Norris had got past. But yeah, we'll never know. It's hard one to judge. Rating Lando Norris, his sprint, I think it was disappointing, the fact that he's been beaten by his teammate Piastri. That didn't help him, especially considering he got the job done into to P1 and potentially should have won it from there. In the race, he was comfortably second place. There was not an awful lot going on, and then he was absolutely brilliant at the end. I think some of the moves that he pulled I think were really good. Obviously overshot a couple of them, but when you're the guy behind and Max was saying he was going to the left or the inside or the outside and what should I do, well, you know, you pick a side and you defend Max. That's what you normally do. And I think he overdid it, Verstappen. I think disappointing Norris on his side that it ended the way it did, because he should have really come home for a win here. It's probably one of the hardest ratings to give Lando Norris, because at the point it was my driver of the day, so I just don't know how to where do you get criticised. I think criticism definitely lies in terms of the sprint race. He should have done better there, and he was kicking himself on terms of that. But in the race, I think he was brilliant. He just hung in there, didn't really let Max get away. In the smallest slip, he was right on there and really should have won it. Went out, not really down to him. It was Max turned in on him in the end. He had nowhere to go. I'm going to go for an 8 out of 10 because I think the racing was just really, really good. I know that I'm going to give him 2 because drop 2 down because his sprint wasn't good at all, to be honest with you. But yeah, hats off to him for finally bringing some real spice to this season, isn't he? An absolutely fantastic job from him. Let's get to the predictions review, and well, I've got these horribly wrong in the end, haven't I? I thought Lando Norris would nick pole positions, Verstappen second and Charles Leclerc in third. I was wrong on all 3, wasn't I? A great job from Max Verstappen. He took the pole. Norris got second, and George Russell the surprise third, wasn't he? And in for the race, I had Lando Norris winning it, Verstappen second and Charles Leclerc third. Again, I think that would have been right, but for the incident, I think Norris would have done enough to beat Verstappen, but we'll never know. But surprised to see Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri and Carlos Sainz. I don't think anyone could have predicted that, so I'm going to cut myself a little bit of slack on that one. I thought it would be a good weekend for Lando Norris. It should have been. It looked like potentially could have been 2 race wins, I suppose, for the sprint and the race, but it just didn't work out that way at all, unfortunately for him. And I thought it'd be a bad race weekend for the Mercedes, and well, they've only gone on and won the race. So yeah, wrong on that side. Probably the worst predictions again from me. So yeah, if you should not put the lottery in this weekend, should I? But there we go. Give it a go. But yeah, it's spiced up the race weekend, isn't it? And I'm really looking forward to Silverstone. Thank God we're just right there next week. The McLaren should be strong. The Red Bull will no doubt be strong in the hands of Max Verstappen. And will we see Mercedes close up? They generally do go well in Silverstone. And Ferraris, could they finally pull something back? Because they were the guys to beat, weren't they, up until Monaco, and they've sort of dropped off the boil. But the championship is really spicing up. We're not yet in a championship battle. I think Max is comfortably ahead with 70 odd points, but it's really tightening up. We're getting some fantastic racing. The constructors looks good for a battle. Mercedes picked up some good points, didn't they, to close the gap on McLaren, so it was all to play for. Looking forward to the action next time out. We head to Silverstone, but thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe and comment as always. See you next time.